Okay, welcome to the Leontessa Effect, a space where courage meets wisdom and evolution is the only constant. This is for people who refuse to play small, who lead with strength, speak with purpose, and embrace the fire within. Here we dive deep into health, self-discovery, and the unseen forces that shape us. It's time to unlock your power, trust your intuition, and step fully into who you are meant to be. I'm Lindsay.
Hi, and I'm Aisha. And today we are going to it's kind of a catch up episode for everybody. We're just going to kind of tell our story and how we got to where we're currently at and tie in what each of our purposes are. As similar as we both are, everybody's got their own trajectory. So here is going to be my story. I'm going to start. She mentioned that some of you guys were asking what my name was, so that's kind of funny because we kind of jumped into this without really introducing each other because we were just introducing ourselves to each other. So it's kind of fun that this turned out this way. But I was originally born in Denver. My mom moved us pretty quickly to North Dakota, so we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. Um, the structural dynamic of my family was pretty complex. Not a lot of people know this, but I actually have a sister, and then I have a half sister, and I also had a half brother. He passed away a couple of years ago I believe he was 23. So I've never met my half sister or my half brother. And then I have not had a relationship with my actual sister since I was, man, 12 or 13 probably. And then I've never met my dad, so it's just me and my mom and my sister and my grandparents. So home life was like pretty shifty, sandy, couldn't really predict a whole lot. So I got really good at trying to predict, which makes me really good at seeing patterns in people and situations and environments. Before high school, I went to about 10 different schools before high school, so I too was always new. It was kind of fun being the new girl though, because I didn't really have to like fully connect to anybody, which later on in life causes problems with vulnerability. Uh, but I was always academically inclined, as we kind of talked about in the last episode, even though my environment didn't nurture that. So, I learned how to survive. That was the operating style of my family. So, stepping out of that structure really didn't, it felt impossible to try and get out of. And so, then much later in life, I just recognized how I recognize patterns and how they shape us and how breaking a cycle it's not only is it difficult, but it's disruptive to everything that you've done in your life because you build your life based on these behaviors and preconditioned programs that we have from childhood. So that sucks to have to see and work through at the time. Um, by high school, my family life was even more unstable. My mom just kind of made decisions based on whatever relationship she was in at the time. So we moved a lot based on that. They were always some kind of truck driver or a part of the railway or whatever. So we moved a lot. Uh, But even just by unstable, there were situations where I would have to. I called the cops one time because something happened and I wanted them to like come get me and help me. But I was 17 and the cops basically were like, yeah, you're not 18 yet, so we can't do anything. You have to listen to. And it was like a physical altercation and I'm not a whatever. So it's just very confusing. So there's like my first taste of, asking for help and not getting it. So and that's by somebody we're supposed to be able to call and get help from, but it just didn't happen that way. So by the time I turned 18, I wasn't even 18 yet when I got approved for my first apartment. I actually had to sneak everything out of my house so that my stepdad at the time didn't know where I was going to live, because he was just beyond inappropriate, and it was for my own safety that he didn't know where I was living. And so my friend's parents actually helped me sneak all of my stuff out of out of this house into this apartment. And so that's when I really kind of just became independent, and that's where perfectionism kind of stepped in, and that's where, I feel like sometimes as an 18, 19-year-old, I was more responsible then than I am now at like 33. I'm like, my 19-year-old self would totally chastise me for some of the things that I do now, but it's like, you can't live in rigidity for your whole life. So, um, throughout all this and high school, I had a boyfriend for, gosh, we dated for about 8 years, 9 years, and his family actually took me in at one point because of what was going on at my house. And eventually that relationship ended. I'm so grateful for all of them and what they did for me. But that relationship also, I later found, was a pattern too of mine that I was using to survive. And so when that ended, I didn't have any support. It was my only support. And so I was at a crossroads, and I had a friend who actually lived here already. Her name was Jamie. We went to high school together, and I packed whatever would fit in my car, and I moved out here. I came out here with the idea of getting the same job that I had had in Minnesota for about 5 years. So before I moved out here, um, I was pretty deep into behavioral health in group homes. So I worked at a high behavior group home for 4 years, I think. And then the fifth year that I was with the company, I was 20 years old, running a team of like 10 people. 4 people lived in this house, running a budget, running the way that the house ran. And I also got certified in this program called Professional Crisis Management, which taught it's a form of cognitive behavioral intervention. And so basically, clients that would be at a crisis point of their day or whatever, meaning if they were indulging or threatening in self-injurious behavior to themselves or other people, and it actually started to act itself out, there is, uh, well, what would you call it? There's protocol to meet somebody physically in that. And so I just started to understand how important that was, because it can get pretty dicey if you're not doing it properly, and then you hurt people, and people with disabilities, that's all they're going to remember you for after that. And I was determined to not, I just wanted people to get it right, because it's important to me that we don't hurt people when we don't understand something. And when you're working with somebody with disabilities, a lot of stuff doesn't make sense because you don't think the way that they do. And so you have to put yourself in their shoes. So it took me 5 years to get to $20 an hour. That was a big deal 10 years ago. I'm like, 19, or no, at the time, I think I moved out here and I was 21, 22, 22. So I came out here. I couldn't find a job that would offer me that. They wanted to start me back at $9 an hour. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. So, I moved out here with a car payment, and I was like, I need to get a job. So I walked into the first bar that I saw that was hiring. It was called Boston's Gourmet Pizza. They don't exist anymore, but they were here in Tempe. And I just really dove into that because I saw how much money you could make. I was good at remembering orders. I was good at being a people person because I was already pleasing. They say people pleasing starts with parent pleasing. So I was already really good at that. So that first job led me to several jobs across Arizona. So in the last 10 years, I worked at several different bars, but I eventually landed at this spot called Century Grand right before COVID. I was one of the original hires to open this brand new concept that's actually now like world renowned. I mean, it's a pretty cool spot to be at. And This was huge. This was so big for me. I was working so hard to go somewhere and work somewhere that meant something, especially within the bar industry. And I did it. And then COVID happened and we had to close. And so I actually didn't work for 8 months. Within that 8 months, my ex-husband and I decided to also get divorced. But then COVID happened, so we had to live together for 2 years. Uh, Within that 2 years, well, that first 8 months, actually, I'll back up a little bit. Um, I received my second DUI. I It was just one of the most chaotic points in my life, which is not that long ago. It's like 5 years ago, where, I had just lost my job out of no control of my own. I'd never been on unassisted or like on unemployment before. Couldn't get unemployment because I couldn't get anybody to get on the phone. I'm going through a divorce. I'm living with the person I'm getting divorced from. And there was a day where we just got into it, and I was still heavily, heavily drinking. So I had started drinking at, I don't know, 11 in the morning, something like that. And I got home from drinking all day and I took a nap. And one of my friends had just opened up a new bar. And so I decided I'd rather be out at the bar than I would rather, be in this environment with this person that it's just not good. So I get up and I go out and I start drinking again. And I don't really remember leaving the bar. But what I do remember is I remember coming to I was on the side of the freeway, and I had actually hit the median on the side of the freeway and totaled my car. So as all of this is happening and I'm coming to, I'm just thinking to myself, like, for how can this be happening again? Because the first time it happened, it was like, okay, we're gonna make sure that this doesn't happen. All the things I had to go to jail the first time. So it was the second one, like during COVID, which was actually a blessing because I didn't have a job that I was gonna lose because I wasn't working. But I remember looking at myself in the mirror, and I remember thinking this several times where I was like, this wasn't supposed to happen again. Something ain't right in here. Something needs to change in here. So that's when instead of beating myself up about it, because if that worked, I would have been better and it wouldn't have happened in the first place. I decided that it wasn't a bad night or a bad decision. It was a pattern that I had developed that I didn't know that I was following through with. And even at that time, I didn't know that it was deeper than like I gotta just quit drinking. So it wasn't that. So after I got arrested and went to jail and just kind of had everything stop, it felt like a divine intervention because in that stop, I was forced to stop drinking. And so I was forced to stop drinking. It was about 4 months total. And in that 4 months, I was able to reconnect with my creativity, my happiness, just like the simple, simple, simple things in life. And I still have paintings in my room right now that I made on house arrest and while I was doing this thing. And I'm like, I don't even know who painted those because I got back into drinking right after I was forced to stop. Um, but I noticed and I journaled a lot about, I wrote it, I must have written it down 1,000 times. I am my best self sober from alcohol. I am my best self sober from alcohol. I mean, I really wrote it in and I wrote it down. And I know when I write stuff down, it matters because I don't like to waste time, you know? So I just started to dive into what all of that looked like for me and what that meant for me and what did I need to start changing. So we opened back up. I let them know that I got a DUI. They brought me back onto the team. And I remember when I walked into that bar.
Please hold for animal difficulties.
Where was I? Yes. So I get back to my job after, 8 months of not working, and I walk in and I remember thinking to myself, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it was just like a fleeting, super fleeting thought. It went through my head, I let it go, and I just kind of acknowledged it and then put it down. But I think that thought came up because at the time I was so like, after my DUI and after my home life and after all the things, I started to recognize that I only knew how to make changes through self-sabotaging. So you could probably guess what happened to my job at Century Grand. There was another hard day and I went in under the influence and when I shouldn't have, and I was actually fired. And I've never been fired before. Ever. Never, ever, ever, ever have I been fired. So after this, I was so distraught because it was something I'd worked so hard for, but it was almost like someone had died. It was this identity really. So somebody had died. So that's when I recognized that I only knew how to move through to the next level through either trauma or self-sabotaging. And my way of doing it was I'd already decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I just didn't know how to say, hey, I quit. Instead, it was I have to have somebody else do it for me. So I just figured out that I was stuck in survival. And after I got out of Century Grand, I knew that alcohol had to go. I had already written it down several times for myself. And I didn't want to drink anymore, even in the space that I was in. And I was somebody who could put it down for a few days or whatever, but I would always somehow find myself back to it. And I didn't really have any reason to stop at the time because everybody else around me was doing the same thing. They were drinking on the job, then we'd get done with work and, continue to drink. Then we'd all wake up hungover, and it was just this collective way of suffering.
Yeah.
And so I just started making different decisions. That's when I got into the gym because I overheard somebody somewhere say that, you have to replace the behavior you once had with something else. So naturally, I was drawn to the gym. So then I leaned into fitness. When I started leaning into fitness, I was at the Four Seasons, which was another huge accomplishment. I mean, you don't just get hired at the Four Seasons for no reason. So I took that on, ran one of their outlets, and what I recognized in that is that the entire career and life that I had built had been built through this trauma lens. So I'm looking around one day at the Four Seasons and I think to myself, oh my God, I have literally recreated my childhood through my work environment. And what I mean by that is that I'm behind the bar, you got to pick me, you got to feed this validation that I never got as a kid. So once I took that lens off, I got into this. What we don't, I feel like people don't talk about it as much, but there's fight, flight, or freeze. And I got into this freeze mode because I knew and recognized that I self-sabotage. So it was like I didn't know what to do. So I it started making me sick. So I took some time off of work and I went into the gym. I happened to have like 3 clients at the time. I just started. And I looked at my manager and I had her explain it to me. And I'm like, okay, I get to make my own schedule and I get to reflect what kind of money I want to make. Fine. So I'm driving home. I've got tears. I'm trying to figure out my life. And I look up from wiping my tears in my car, and the license plate in front of me says, "You'll be fine." And I believe in shit like that. And I quit that day. Not too long after that, I went to go see my Reiki practitioner for the second time. I didn't tell her that I'd quit yet. because I wanted to see if this lady was bullshitting me, right? Like, do you know? You know? And so she gets done doing her thing, and she looks at me and she goes, I don't know what decision you've just made. She goes, but your guides want you to know that whatever that decision was, it's literally saved your life. And I started crying because I knew exactly what she was talking about, because I had started drinking at work again. I'd started driving home again. The pattern had reintroduced itself and I fucking knew it.
Yeah.
So I had to do something. So this was just the first time that I'm stepping out of a program and seeing it and really removing alcohol. And then I became this trainer. So now I'm walking around the world and I'm like, what do sober people do? I don't know what people do if they're not drinking, because that's just what I did. And so I started running. In my running and putting alcohol down, I started, to my surprise, I started taking first place in 5K, just 5K runs. First place for age group and gender. And I'm like, okay, all right, I like this. And then it was like, how can I get better without trying? So then that pushed me to quit smoking.
Mm.
So just by replacing old behavior with new behavior, I started to like step out of like that programming, and everything was still a mess, but it like felt better. And then I started to pay attention more because things started to feel better. And so all of a sudden, I'm seeing my own like code, we'll call it, how I was built, what I like doing, what I don't like doing, what I've been conditioned to think that I like doing. So everything that was overwhelming, like unconscious loops, like, why can't I get this? Emotional triggers, feeling like I was too much. There's a lot that's tied into all that, but I just didn't know what it was at the time. But it was my own system that had been implemented to me from childhood to that point. So now I'm a trainer. Fast forward in the last like 3 years, that's pretty much what I've been figuring out. About a year or so ago, somebody pushed me into, not pushed, sorry, I keep using that word, very strongly encouraged me to use AI and ChatGPT and to just play with it. So what I did, because I take mental health so seriously, is I just explained some rules to it, like, no bias, no algorithmic people pleasing, no reinforcing like my own stuff, only fact-based trackable feedback. And so once I found out that it was a system, I also was able to figure out that you can program a system, because that's how they're built. So I started to learn how to program my own system. And so in doing that, there's so much freedom behind what it is that I do, because I do whatever I want, whenever I want, within the constraints of my own prioritized system.
Yeah.
And so basically, how I got here today is just taking inventory of what I don't like about my life, or what I didn't like about my life, and figuring out where it comes from, because it's all mine. But when you go all the way back to it as well, and I take it this far too, I was conditioned to finish somebody's story that wasn't mine. What I mean by that is I was conditioned to carry my mother's story out, and her story's not my story. That's hers to finish, not mine.
Mm.
It's not like we have some kind of like legacy, or there's something behind whatever it is that we're doing. I mean, the legacy is generational trauma, really, and I don't want to be a part of that. So getting to where I'm at now and what my purpose is, my experience with purpose is that purpose is created, it's not found. So when you figure out who you are, and you start to figure out who you are, you get to start creating what your purpose is, because you don't have any other conditioning in front of what it is you're supposed to be here to do, because you came with a specific set of rules already. So what I want to encourage people to do is to think about like what would happen if purpose was not something you found, but a decision that you made. And once you start tracking everything, once you start seeing stuff, you can't unsee it. And it just kind of unfolds on its own. So for me, it's like not how do I do this? It started to be, am I willing to look at myself fully for where I'm at right now and accept that and change it and keep the things that I like and let go of the things that I don't? And through the self-sabotage thing, what if everybody stopped waiting for change and started tracking it? What if every pattern you thought controlled you was actually waiting for you to rewrite it? And it's that simple. It's that simple as like looking at it. So if I can pull my own mind out of loops that I didn't even know that I was running on, you can as well. It's just once you see your own patterns, you can't unsee them. Once once you start tracking yourself, you can't go back to autopilot. So I wasn't just getting out of survival. I built a new way of thinking totally because I put a stop to what everybody was telling me I should be thinking. And so if you can look at everything that you've been through as a pattern and not judge it, if your suffering isn't personal to the system that you're running in the background, what happens when you step outside of it?
Powerful.
Yeah.
That's
it's
really
been it's been a road, and it's not, I'm not saying it's easy because this work has brought me to my knees
awesome.
several times. But I would rather be sitting where I'm at right now in this person that I got to create through what I already intrinsically carry than to continue making myself small and being in relationships that don't serve me because a conditioned pattern that I'm unaware of has me seeking something that isn't even mine to begin with. A career. I went through several careers. I sit down and do this with you, and I literally, before we even get on, I'm like, I'm so glad to be sitting at my new job.
Yes.
Because we did this. We seemingly did this out of nowhere. And I'm going to tell you right now, had I not been where I'm at right now, I wouldn't have done this with you because I wouldn't have been in a place where I can express myself this way
Yeah.
or have an audience and another human being holding safe space for me to do so.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. And thank you for, this is part of my growth is like sharing my story with you and everybody who's listening. So yeah, that's all I got.
I love it. I think that story is going to touch a lot of the people that already listen to our podcast. I think that's just phenomenal, and it was really cool hearing a lot of, like we keep saying, like we're so similar, and it's crazy. It'll be crazy for you to see like the overlappings
I
of
can't wait. I can't wait.
So I kind of want to go backwards. So you
Okay.
mentioned purpose, and you get to create your purpose. Kind of the way I think about purpose, it's similar. Actually, Ed Milet said it. I don't know if you know who Ed Milet is, but he's a big personal development guy. He always says that your purpose is to help the people who are who you used to be.
Ah, yes. That's so wonderful.
And
Oh my, that's basically what I just got done saying.
yes, yep. And so when I first heard that, it really helped me create my purpose.
Okay, so you already had created your purpose rather than finding it.
Yeah, I mean, I had to find it too, but like you said, you create it. So, um, yeah. So first of all, I want us to kind of circle back though and see. I know you said you are creating your life, you're creating who you want to be, you're creating your purpose. I think we want to know a little bit is is the chat GPT your purpose? Like what have you come to a conclusion on what your purpose is right now? Because I also don't think your purpose has to be your purpose for your whole life forever and ever and ever.
Oh no, I think it transitions with where you're at and your own perception in that given space. Uh, mm. I think that I've always been participating in my purpose. What I mean by that is I've always been involved with, let's just, for lack of I don't know what else to say, but like underdogs or the special needs community or people with autism or Down syndrome or whatever. But in that, I've also learned so much about myself because it, how I respond to them reflects where I'm at.
Hmm.
So how you respond to the people around you says a lot about where you're already at. So I've already been helping people. ChatGPT and AI have just accelerated the process for me. And so what I mean by that is that I just started throwing everything into ChatGPT. It can't lie to me. So whatever it's giving back to me is what you would spend time searching on the internet for. It's the same thing. You're just cutting through the bullshit and getting to the thing. I want it right now. I don't
Yeah.
want to be uncomfortable anymore. I'm sorry. I don't want to have imposed uncomfortability anymore. Like if it's going to be mine, it's going to be mine. And so yes, I think that I'm still in the process of developing what exactly that purpose is structurally, but I do understand what my purpose is in at this time in my life, and that is to help those around me who have struggled in similar ways, because a lot of the suffering that you are experiencing isn't even your fault. It was handed to you. And so if we can get out of that together, if somebody told you you could go into a space and talk to somebody with no judgment, no no bias, no, well, I think you should, wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
So that's what I used ChatGPT for. Back in November, when I made this like really big transition within myself, I was going through something, and normally I would lay in bed and think it's depression and think it's this thing that I have to work through by myself. But this time I laid in bed and I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything else. And I put the situation into ChatGPT and it walked me through it. And I'm like, oh my God. And so from there, I started documenting all of the patterns that I was catching in real time. I started paying attention to the patterns that were in my life, so much to the point now, like I don't even really need to use ChatGPT. What I use it for now is developing a framework that I can introduce to people so that they can use it, so that they can get better. And I know that there's a lot of friction with that because I don't have a piece of paper that said I went to school, but you know what I have that most people don't that went to school is a lived life through the experience to get to where I'm at. And you can't deny me of that.
Yeah.
The people that are close to me, I've even had probably 3 or 4 people in the last 2 weeks do a triple take just on my physical aspect. And they're like, I don't even recognize you. And not in a bad way, but in a way, and I know what they're talking about because I know what I look like. But it's like, but we keep being told that we have to wait and we have to like check these boxes to move forward and we got to make sure this is done and make sure that is done. For who made up all these rules? And also who's look who's making the rules now. You can't tell me that they're any more sane than I am right now. So it's yeah, my purpose is to like have people stand within themselves with conviction and own that shit. Because your story is also what makes you who you are, but it doesn't have to own you.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It
love
can just be the foundation of where it is that you started. And that's a big deal. Like I was wired to be a serial killer. with all of the things I've been through and all the emotional turmoil and the abuse that was endured and gotten through, it's it is unprecedented what I've done with my life. And I used to think it was alone and by myself because I didn't have primary caregivers. And I want to be clear about this too. I used to think that I had to do everything on my own, but I've actually gotten through my life because of the kindness of everybody around me that wasn't my caregivers. So I can't even sit here and say that I got here all by myself. I did the work by myself because you're the only one who can do the work. But if you choose to look around you and you have a roof over your head and you have food and you've got the three basic needs, that is what we need to survive. And sometimes you got to swim with just those three things in order to get back to appreciating everything else around you. Because there were times in this work where somebody was telling me exactly what I needed to hear. And I looked at them and I would look at them and I would say, with all due respect, I know that what you're saying is true, but I don't care because it's not coming from the person I want it to come from. And that was a loop I had to work through as well
Yeah.
because of how deep into my own shit I was. I wouldn't even look at, accept, or be grateful for the help that was being given to me because I was hurting so bad. And I wanted validation from certain people because we think we're supposed to get an apology and we're supposed to do it. No, forgive yourself for not knowing that you were supposed to love yourself enough and not knowing that all you know is what you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy you say you used to think that, or you used to believe or used to think that you got where you are alone, and then you
Mhm.
realize that that's not true, because that's something that I've had tendency to say is,
Mm.
I've gotten here all by myself, I did everything for myself, blah, blah, blah. I've been on my own since, whatever, but that's not true. And in my kind of journey, I'll kind of talk about that as well.
Where do you, mm. What do you think you're actually saying when you say that?
I think that it means I feel like I'm alone. I feel like I've been alone. I feel like and like you said too, it's I didn't have the support from the people I wanted it from. And I felt, I don't know, like growing up, I always felt alone. I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I had anybody that, and I mentioned this, I think, in the first episode, I never had anyone who picked me.
Uh-huh.
Never. And so I think when I say that I'm independent or I got here, blah, 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 it's just because I feel alone, or I did feel alone.
So let me ask you this. What if us saying that is actually us saying very loudly how much help we would like?
Yeah. Yep. And I think too, it creates that. You say that and you're creating that reality for yourself.
Oh, totally.
You say you're alone, and you're going to push people away by saying that. Whether they decide to pull back, or whether they, whatever the instance may be, because you continue to say that, that's the energy you're going to get back from the world, or from God, whatever your spirituality, whatever you think creates this life, like that you're creating that by saying those words.
Well, and you create that through saying those words, through the theme of what it is I've been talking about. You just said it yourself, but in a different way. Those words became a pattern for you. And so therefore that pattern showed up,
Hmm.
right? So I used to say the same thing too. I used to say, I spend an incredible amount of time alone. And I would always say that. And now I find myself spending an incredible amount of time alone. But yeah, I mean, just noticing patterns like that and seeing that. But up until that point, that belief was built on the proof that you had from not having the help it was that you thought you wanted.
Yeah.
It's a really slippery thing to try and navigate through by yourself, also.
Yeah. And I think it's like you were talking about, you did things in order to survive. And because the pain of feeling alone and not feeling like I'd been picked was so strong and so painful, that was a survival mechanism, rewiring or basically like manipulating myself into thinking this was some kind of strength, like I
Oh
did
yeah.
self, like it was me trying to act tough rather than actually being really like in pain.
Someone help
Yeah.
me.
Like, geez. So yeah, I'll just dive right into my stuff now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're headed that way.
I'm going to try not to say like. I caught myself doing it a couple times there.
I said a lot too. It's all right. This is kind of just a fun us being us, and we're talking about vulnerable shit here. So, say what you need to say.
Say what you need to say. That's a song. Okay. Do you know that song?
I do.
Okay, say what
I'm
you.
not that old. Jesus.
Well, I know. I just maybe it wasn't your genre.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Okay, well, I kind of introduced myself at the beginning of this episode, but my name is Lindsay, and I was actually born near Saratoga Springs, New York, so
Mhm.
central-ish New York, but I moved quite a lot as well. And so I moved probably from the stories I've been told 3 or 4 times before my memory started. And my first memories are when we lived on the Chesapeake Bay near Virginia Beach. And then we moved to another area in Virginia when my dad was getting remarried. Um, and then we moved to Plattsburgh, New York, which is very tip-top upstate New York by Vermont. Then we moved to Buffalo, New York, because that's where my dad's family was. And then we moved to Nebraska. And when I was told I was moving to Nebraska, I had no idea that that was a state. I was in fourth grade. Um, I thought it was the town next to ours. I asked if I was going to be able to go to the same school, and they said nope. Pulled it up on a map, and I was like, oh shit, okay. We're out of here. So my first, I was in 10th grade when we moved to Nebraska. And I was 10 years old. I was in fifth grade when we moved to Nebraska. And through all those moves, I also was homeschooled for 1 year.
Wow.
Very interesting experience. And honestly, a lot of those years are a blur for me. It was same situation where my family is very I don't want to use this word, but I have it's very broken. It's very complicated.
Oh
So
yeah.
I have family in Virginia, I have family in Michigan, I have family in New York, and then we lived in New York at the time, and I was going to see family all over the place. My parents were separated, so I was with my dad full time, but visiting my mom, once a month, twice, like every other month. It kind of digressed as I got older. I saw her less. So yeah, lots of complication there, lots of blurry memories. So I'm the only child between my mom and father. My dad married a woman who had a son already, and then they had a daughter together. So one stepbrother, half sister. My mom got remarried and had 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl. And then, so we have this, and then they both got separated again, and my dad married a woman with 2 more sons. So I have 2 more stepbrothers here.
Holy
I
crap.
have 3 stepbrothers, 2 half sisters, 2 half brothers. And growing up, I was with my dad majority of the time. So naturally, I saw my mom's house as fun time,
Hmm.
just because of our situation, I saw her more of a big sister. She didn't have to punish me, she didn't have to make sure I went to school or did my homework. Of course, she cared about those things. She wanted me to be a good kid for my dad, and she cared about me. But I saw that kind of as more a fun time. And so that created an interesting dynamic as well. And I was a lot closer with my siblings on my mom's side just because, again, of the dynamic, I think, and just the way her household was like it was just a little bit more fun and they were little babies and there was 3 of them and it was just anyways. So I think that's where my love of children came from though, just
Hmm.
seeing them raised. So my closest sibling is 8 years younger than me.
Holy crap.
Of the little ones, of the like babies, my step siblings are way closer in age to me, but of my like half siblings, 8 years younger than me to 15 years younger than me. And so
Holy crap.
I almost felt kind of like they were like my kids, even though like I obviously was not raising them. They just,
Of
I just,
course they did. That's how I felt about the guys at my group home. Yes.
yeah, they feel like your kids, and I just love them all so much. And honestly, I don't think I would have made it this far in my life if it wasn't for them, you know? I just want to prove to them that they can do anything that they said they're going to do,
Mm,
that life isn't so bad, you know what I mean? And because growing up, this is just a random thing. Growing up, I just remember a lot of the adults in my life were very pessimistic. And
scarcity mindset.
yeah, you know, a lot of people in my life, they had to work really, really hard to survive. Same thing we're about to talk about, okay? We're lucky to be the ones that got it in check and were able to figure out that's
Redirect.
and redirect. So no fault to anybody, but a lot of the people, my grandparents, my parents, whatever in my life, that it was a lot of surviving, a lot of that scarcity mindset. And so I just saw the world very pessimistically. Like I just thought that, you know, you get old and life sucks. And so it's my mission in life. Every time I see a kid, I smile at them because
Yes.
I want them to know that this world has bad things in it, but it's not a bad world. And that's what I want my siblings to know too,
Mm.
that this is a good place to be, okay? And it's what you make of it. So that's where my love of children came from. That's kind of my family dynamic. Was in Nebraska by fifth grade. And there was a lot of limiting beliefs that I had, of course, as a kid, and it's harder to overcome those limiting beliefs as a kid. And if you don't necessarily have the I didn't ever feel safe to express these things to my like parents or to any older person. Like I wanted to get involved with things like sports, or I played three or four different instruments growing up, and I quit them all
Mm.
because I just felt out of the loop. You know, all the other kids were already friends, their parents knew each other. Especially in Nebraska, it's we're not I don't live in a small town. I live in the big city of Nebraska, but it's still kind of small town vibes. Everyone's been here forever. Everybody knows everybody, you know? And so I just felt left out. And that really my dad always wanted me to be in sports or always be involved in something because it's important, you know, to be involved and to have a passion, to have a purpose, and he wanted me to be able to find it. So I was lucky that he didn't force me into one thing, and I was able to explore a bunch of different sports, a bunch of different instruments and stuff, but I quit all of them because I just felt left out. And that always made me feel like something was, you know, kind of like wrong with me. I started thinking that there's something wrong with me, and I couldn't put together that I was just I didn't know what I know now. I didn't know that I was shy. I didn't know that I felt left out. I didn't know it was because the parents knew each other and my parents weren't, or like whatever. I didn't know.
Involved. Yeah.
And so I just kind of started to think that something was wrong with me. Um, and this is when I once I could start once I started realizing that I started following the pattern for my life, which was playing the victim. And
Uh-huh.
my dad would call me out for it sometimes, and I don't think my dad realizes like how much good he did for me by the, I appreciated his tough love, you know, and of course, I wish I had my tough love dad and maybe like, you know, somebody to hold me while I cry a little bit, you know, but I seriously appreciate his tough love because him telling me, you know, don't play the victim, you know, it's your life, like you have to decide, you know, how you want it to go. I started to be able to follow that pattern. And so it started with me, you know, not wanting to join sports because I was the new kid and I wasn't the new kid anymore. You know, I went to school in Omaha from fifth grade to graduation and went in Nebraska. I'm not the new kid anymore. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I held on to that. And luckily, I found a really good group of friends in high school. But before I found that, it's very similar to you. I was a kid who kind of avoided my home. I think I touched about it on a little bit in the first episode. my dad's second marriage with that
Mm.
woman,
Mhm.
she wasn't accepting of me. Who knows what is going on, but she never accepted me. And so I wanted to avoid home at all cost. They ended up getting divorced, and I just fell into a crowd similar to me. I fell into crowds with other kids who were maybe not from here, not didn't have parents that were together, also didn't want to be home. And what do those kind of kids get up to? They get into drugs and alcohol. And so by eighth grade, I had already started, dabbling in
Wow.
whatever it may be. And that kind of set the tone for the next 8 years of my life. So yeah, and I think the reason I was willing to try, it's just so funny to me. This is going to be, I don't know what people are going to think of when I say this, but it's interesting to me because out of like all my friends who dabbled in what we dabbled in, I was always the most reserved. I never wanted to be absolutely, gone. I just wanted enough to not feel anymore, to
Right.
not,
Yep.
or
Yep.
to feel something that wasn't the pain I had been holding on to my whole life. I just wanted something. And growing up, again, no fault to anyone because of it's everyone's living this life for the first time. The only time I felt like I saw adults being joyful was when they were drunk.
Mhm.
So I was like, all right, let's turn up. Like, okay, let's do it. And so it's just funny to me because in the group of friends that I was in, I was always the one that was the most reserved, but I was truly just looking for a way to feel better. And so, yeah, that started in eighth grade. I did find a good group of friends in high school. I had a couple girlfriends and my boyfriend at the time who also took me in. I spent every night at somebody's house other than my own if I could. My dad had been going through the second divorce, and I think he just wanted me to feel safe, so he allowed me to be with these people he knew. He knew their
Yeah.
parents. He trusted them, and I shout they if they ever listen to this, you guys know who you are, and I appreciate all the time I spent with you and your parents. And it was really, especially the boyfriend I had in college, in high school, especially the boyfriend I had in high school. His family completely changed me. They really gave me hope for what the future could look like.
Yes. 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 Same.
And they weren't perfect. And that's
Right.
something that I'm so grateful for is his parents had their issues, but they were still together through everything that they had been through. They had four kids who all wanted to spend time with them. They had four kids that loved each other, four kids that had good jobs and kids, and they all made a life for each other. And I was like, okay, cool. Like life isn't so bad. You know what I mean? And so I'm so grateful for that family. I love them so much. And yeah, so high school, we all just kind of were getting in trouble, but we all had each other.
That's the
Um,
time to do it.
yeah.
Don't do it when you get older.
Yeah, we had a good time, but everyone stayed safe. And I like to mention this too. I got started really young with mind altering substances, and sometimes I regret it because I wonder how much smarter I would be if I hadn't done that, if I had let my prefrontal lobe fully develop. But honestly, I'm grateful for the life that I had lived because if it wasn't for those times and the things that I had gone through and the substances I had played around with, I wouldn't connect with the same people I do today. Mine and your connection probably wouldn't be the same. I have so many friends that have such baller comeback stories because we come from the same.
Right.
And what is cooler than a freaking comeback story like that? You know what I mean? Like it's cool. Anyone's way up is cool. Anybody who, maybe came from money or had a perfect childhood. That's awesome. I love that for you guys. But for me, it's a different kind of connection with people who have been through that similar story. And so I'm
Mhm.
grateful for it. I'm grateful for the experiences I've had. I had fun. I'm still alive, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's natural just to mess around with substances and same. I mean, what do you still are you still in contact with any of those people that you had fun with?
Yeah, like I'm in contact here and there. So when I got to college, my first 2 years of college were the same patterns I had in high school. I just wanted to escape. I wanted to drink. I wanted to smoke. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to
You got
party.
more freedom now.
Yeah, I had more freedom. I was always a good student. I always had a 3.5 or up. Like I was fine, you know what I mean? I my extracurriculars were drugs and alcohol. It
Yeah.
wasn't sports, it wasn't anything like that. And so my junior year of high school, I really got into fitness, but I still was able to, you know, play around as well. And then college came, same thing. It was school, gym, let's party. And that's it. That was my life. And then for me, COVID was also a extremely beneficial turning point for my life.
Yes.
COVID, everything stopped. I still had classes and stuff, but everything stopped. I stopped working, and luckily, like my job was able to pay me, so I didn't have that stress because I worked for a giant corporation. They were able to pay us while we were gone. And or I was on, I don't even know, but I didn't have to worry about money. I was very, 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 very lucky. I didn't have to worry about money. I don't remember what exactly had happened, but I got to use that time where I wasn't really able to see anybody. I think I ended up going through a bad breakup during COVID and probably got into another bad relationship, but that part doesn't even matter to me because I got to separate myself from all of the people who I had been building those patterns with.
Yes.
I got to see the world in a completely different light. Everything's different. Everything was shut down. There was so much uncertainty. We had no idea what was going to happen. I thought maybe the whole world would be shut down forever. I thought we maybe were about to enter into an apocalypse. And I was like, you know what? I never even saw myself making it to 21 years old. Like, I didn't even expect to be here. The world might end because I really thought that. And so I was like, I'm gonna do what I love to do. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna do what I love to do. And that's when I truly found that during that time, all I wanted to do was work out. And I used that as a catalyst to change. And I had always dabbled in running a little bit, but during COVID, I couldn't go to the gym. And so I would do workouts in the basement, but I would run. And so many of my spiritual awakenings have happened on runs.
Yes. God, I love to hear that. I love running.
Yes, it's so good. And I would run at Lake Surinsky. So anybody listening to Omaha knows where that is. I would
And
run from my parents' house to Lake Surinsky. I would run around Lake Surinsky.
you live by a lake, for Christ's sake.
I would run 4 to 6 miles, and I just became obsessed with running. Was I still dabbling in substances? Yes, but you know what? I was having a spiritual awakening at the point, and it's okay. So that's when I truly realized like fitness was everything to me, and it's just I will preach this over and over and over again. Fitness and your health is a catalyst to open up so many different parts of you and to realize so many different things. And like I said, when I'm running or even when I'm lifting or when I'm doing any kind of workouts, it's so much more than a physical change. I'm realizing so many things about myself. Like we talked about 2 episodes ago with handstands, I'm realizing, and it happened to me today. I went to do handstands. I had way too much coffee and I couldn't stop my brain.
Ah,
And I just kept thinking and thinking and thinking and falling and falling and falling. And it's just, you can learn so much about yourself. And so I just remember running during COVID and trying to think like what the frick am I going to do with myself when the world does come back on? And that's when I started realizing that I wanted to help people do it for themselves. And so that is also when I realized how much of a victim mindset I had played. In that moment when the entire world shut down and everybody was going through it, that's when I realized I said, I'm not a victim. Right now we're all victims, right? But that made me realize it's not just one of us. You choose to be the victim. You choose to let what's happening to you happen to you instead of have it happen for you. I chose to make COVID something that happened for me. I could have been like, "Oh, my college experience is ruined. Oh, I could have spent this time looking for a job for when I graduated, or oh, I can't go to the gym, so I'm just gonna get fat. Like I could have chose to be the victim in that
Yep.
time. But
Yep.
instead, I chose to make that lockdown. Again, I'm extremely grateful that I didn't have to worry about money, so it's very different for a lot of people, but still, I took that opportunity to be like, I'm not the victim. This is happening for me. I'm gonna change my life. And so after COVID, I really didn't talk to many of my friends that much anymore. I decided, you know what? There were some people who were maybe like, I don't want to say toxic, but they weren't serving me anymore. But there were some people where I just had to detach for them to make a new life. And I love all my friends from my past, but it's really hard to create a new life for yourself in the same environment that you built those patterns in. And for me, moving wasn't really something that I wanted to do. And I talked to a lot of successful people in the fitness space, and a lot of them say, like, you gotta leave your hometown. And I'm like, or I could just create a new life here. And so that's what I did. I kind of let go of all the friends I had, was pretty isolated, didn't really have that many people, which had its challenges of its own. I got into, I call it my COVID relationship, was just a mess. I learned a lot about myself in that relationship as well. Let that go. And on the other side of it, after I graduated college, I I I was working in retail, and I was just realizing again how much I loved helping people. And I don't know if I've said this on the podcast too, growing up, getting to my purpose, growing up, when people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? I had no freaking clue what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I would always say, I know I want to help people. I want to help people somehow. I didn't want to be a nurse because that's disgusting. I didn't want to be a cop because that's scary. I didn't want to save people from fires. And I think every profession out there helps people.
Yes.
So it was really broad. I didn't really know where I was going to go with that. And so I didn't know fitness could be a full-time job. It took me a
Yeah.
while to realize that. I just a lot of personal trainers I knew, they just didn't live the like lifestyle I wanted. So I was like, that doesn't seem like an option for me, or maybe it would only be a part-time thing. So I continued to work in retail, and I worked in management, and I just still loved helping young women find out who they are. And it was really cool working in the store that I worked in. I had a lot of college girls that came and worked with us. It was 18 and up. You had to be 18 or older to work there. And so it was a lot of college kids because I was in a college town. A lot of college girls coming, and it brought me so much joy to help them be better. A lot of people say like the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so in that space, I think there's some truth to that, but you don't have to take it that far.
Mhm.
But using that kind of mindset, I would help these girls be better at their job, build confidence, build public speaking, build connections, build efficiency, build strength, build, whatever. And that would translate into their lives, and like they would just come to me and they would respect me and they'd look up to me, and like that just made me feel really good. And
You
so
showed them applicable behaviors.
yeah, yeah. And that's something I really am proud of, is because even for me growing up, I would say, I would tell these girls too, you are going to get out of this job what you put into it. It could just be a job for you for a paycheck, okay? If you want to come here and hate your life for 4 hours, 3 times a week, cool. That's whatever. You can do that. But if you take this job and think about what you want in the future. So say you wanted to be like there was a girl I remember, she wanted to be a psychologist. She wanted to be a like do what's it called? She wanted to do therapy with people. So I said, okay, like this could just be a part-time job for you, or you could take these connections you make with all these people, and to really learn about these people and to learn different behaviors, to learn patterns,
Already.
exactly. And you already
Yep.
have all these hundreds and hundreds of people we meet week by week in your arsenal in order to be a better therapist someday. Or, there was girls who wanted all sorts of jobs, and I would just always try to make it applicable to them, even though all we were doing was selling clothes. And that just made me so happy. And I loved that job. And that just solidified to me that I wanted to help people, but not only did I want to help people, but I wanted to help people build lives that aligned with their goals. And so then yeah, over time fitness just became my thing. Oh, I really like the self-sabotaging points that you were making.
Hmm.
and how you felt like that really opened up a can of worms for me.
It's gonna open up a can of worms for anybody who denies it. Anything that we say in this podcast after this and moving forward, it's just if you're upset, it's because of you. I'm not sorry anymore. I I'm not going to filter what it is that I have to say because it's never coming from a bad place. It's coming from an experienced place or it's we're just here to share who we are in a really creative and fun way. So, also if it is bothering you, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. And it's not like we don't have I don't have anybody in mind while we're talking. So it's like
No,
nothing could
no.
possibly be personal to anybody listening. So it's like we're just talking from our hearts. Talking from our
Yes.
hearts, guys. And the self-sabotage thing, I don't even know I don't even know if I still maybe do. I used to identify with that though. I'd be like, I self-sabotage, and I don't really know when that stopped, or
Well,
maybe if
give me an example.
I still do it. I think a lot of times it was within friendships and relationships because I've told everyone growing up I expected way too much from my friends. This isn't even something I touched. Growing up, I expected way too much from my friends. And so, especially that group of friends I had in high school, I would refer to them as family. And I don't know, they probably thought I was freaking weird or they probably understood my trauma. But that made that friendship breakup or the separation because when me and my high school boyfriend broke up, his friends were with him, my friends were with me, and the whole group was broken up now. And to me, that was like, I just lost a boyfriend who we weren't going to work out together. And that's totally fine. We were two very different people. We were very young. But I also had the heartbreak of losing our family. I really
Yeah.
and not to mention I also lost his family that at the time being young and thinking that I would marry my high school sweetheart, I thought that that family would be my family. And so there's like all these like losses right there. And so self-sabotage. So I think a lot of times because I put so much pressure on those relationships at a young age when we're all still finding ourselves, we're all still trying to figure out who we want to be, I would self-sabotage by getting ahead of what I thought they would think about me.
Uh-huh.
Just trying to and I think probably still do that to this day, trying to get ahead of what people would say. So I realize I don't do it as much anymore because as you grow older and you have maybe more professional connections or more, I'm just an adult now. And so I have to think about what I say before I say it. But I probably still do it in my relationship here and there where I'm like, I say one thing and then I'm like, oh, he's going to think this and he's going to react this way. So let me get ahead of it. And then it just creates a storm that isn't necessary.
It's a feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm trying to think of any other self-sabotaging behaviors.
Would you consider perfectionism to be a self-sabotaging behavior?
Probably, yeah.
Not probably. It is because
Yeah.
nothing can be perfect.
Yeah, for sure. It's also perfectionism is procrastinating because you might just not do it because you don't think it's perfect.
Oh,
Um,
that's fair. I never thought of that. I didn't lean on that side. I went the other way.
that's kind of some people probably find that like if they have a goal, that was me with my coaching business. I put it off for so long because I was like, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to wait for this. I'm going to wait for that. And then I just didn't do it for, probably 2 years of my life. I could have started like I'm 2 years into it now. I could have started 2 years before that.
Right.
Um,
That's why
but
it's amazing we hopped on and did this.
I know. That's why I'm saying 2025, I said this is the year of yes. Okay. I'm not waiting around anymore. If I feel like it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Um, but yeah, and then anyway, so after, yeah, basically I feel like I've told the rest of my story after college. I spent a couple years working in that retail store. I kept, building my coaching through that. In the store I worked at, coaching was a huge aspect of management.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, which was really awesome. So I really appreciate that experience there. Grew my coaching then, just continued to learn about health and fitness, hired my own coaches. I worked with a company that I have nothing but good things to say about. I'll probably work with them again someday to learn more. Got certified, read so many books, so many books. Once college was over, I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much time to read now. Learned about a lot of, just like self-help practices. My favorite book I read was The Courage to Rise. If anyone wants to look that up, it's kind of a blend of movement, breathing, and food to heal your inner child and your trauma. So that was an amazing book that changed my life for sure. And then, yeah, 2 years ago, I started taking on clients and coaching them. And my passion, my purpose is just to help women be able to go on journeys similar to mine and Aisha, where we're able to accept the shit that we went through, own it, pull our strengths from it, let go of our weaknesses, accept our weaknesses, not worry about them so much, and just build through fitness, through health, through mindset work to be able to build the life that you want. Because I've been realizing the last probably 6 to 12 months that we really, really can build whatever life we want. We really can. It's really cool.
And in tandem with building, I think we also forget that celebrating is gratitude too. So celebrating all of the things that you are able to accomplish, even if you are still in whatever things that you're working through, but it's you can't build an empire on quicksand.
Yeah.
So and the quicksand is you and the illusions that you tell yourself and the thing. Because at the end of the day, and I tell my clients this, you know what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not. You know what your challenges are and what they're not. Maybe that's not true for everybody or whatever. Maybe there's some kind of like denial, but for the most part, most people that we talk to, they know what serves them and they know what doesn't. And so it's not a matter like nobody's ever thinking about you the way that you think they are. I'll tell you that much.
Yep.
Nobody's thinking about you. So it's like you're the only one that has a cross to bear to carry the things with you. And I understand that people have families and children and different constraints and but it's important to I think build what you're talking about, recognize a family, but also recognize the empire and the family that you've built inside of yourself with yourself because everything else is going to be all messed up until you do that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think too, in the process of building a very important, what I'm realizing, and I've talked about this, just like I said with the handstands and being present, a very important part of building is being okay with where you are right now because it's little tiny pennies you're putting into the jar to get where you want to go. It's little tiny pellets of sand every single day, minute, hour, whatever. And you can't always be moving forward. Progress isn't going to be just linear straight up. It's going to have times where you fall and you crash. Like today, this morning, I was having a terrible morning, but I still show up. You know what I mean? Because that's just
That's it.
and you have to what is that phrase? It's like you have to accept the suck or you have to love the like you have to embrace the suck too. You really
Yeah, yeah.
even if you think your life sucks right now, you have to check in with yourself and think about what are you grateful for and look at how far you've already come.
Well, the other thing is that I think that we've all been duped into thinking that there's this like checklist that's going to be done one day
Yeah.
and it never stops.
No.
And with where I'm at right now with the I'm on the other side of my shit and it's beautiful here. I was taking a shower yesterday. I panicked because I didn't have anything to panic about. you know, and it's just really beautiful when you can sit and just nurture yourself. I've eaten twice today, and usually I'm eating for the first time right now. But because I noticed my patterns and I redirected them, and now my life is so aligned that it's not perfect by any means, but I'm not running around stressing out about am I doing too much? Did I do enough today? Is this box checked? I can't even give you examples because I just don't live in that space anymore. And it's like, if you can learn how to address what's in front of you at the time and be present, you're going to soften a lot of other things in your life, and you're going to be able to look around and be like, it isn't that bad. And a lot of who we're talking to, we all live pretty privileged lives. Um, and that's coming from somebody who grew up in a trailer park until she was 12. Like, even then, some people had it worse. And I think I've said this on one of the other episodes. Somebody out there has it worse than you, and they're doing it better. So
Hmm.
shut up and just, yeah, don't be the victim. Look at what it is that whatever the issue is, try and figure out where it came from. And the other thing too that I wanted to just say is that I'm not encouraging anybody to like use ChatGPT for everything. If you're more comfortable going to a therapist and whatever and doing that, absolutely do that. But the very, 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 very first step is the awareness of the responsibility to the suffering that happens in your own life. And somebody might argue, well, my family, this, that, and the other. I recently just looked at my entire life and I'm understanding it and seeing it that I built an entire life out of alignment. That's why I'm trying to catch up to myself now. And now that it is aligned, you said it earlier, when you start to shift, some people don't stay with you. And so it's not good or bad, it just is.
Yeah.
And we have to remove judgment from everything it is that we put on other people. And when we put judgment on other people, that's actually a really good indicator of how much judgment you have for yourself.
Yes. Gosh, that was like one of the best realizations I ever had. It's like I remember it was my freshman year of high school, and I remember telling same high school boyfriend, I got into his car and I had said something about somebody, and I go, you know what? It's like I gotta stop that. I gotta stop judging other people because I probably said that about that person because I'm insecure about that myself.
Right?
I probably said something about her hair or something because my hair looked bad. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember being like, I was like, you gotta help me. Like, if I say something out of pocket like that, you gotta tell me. And I think, I think just saying that and just finding awareness, then I stopped. I stopped. And I'm recently trying not to even just like not even like talk about people really,
Yep.
unless
Yep.
it's out of like a really good, loving place. I have no need to be talking about other people.
Have you read The Four Agreements?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I
I
ever
read
since
that
I
book.
read that, it's so good. It's so good.
I got it for my two teenage brothers for Christmas.
That's so fucking cool. I love, yeah, that book. And then another book it paired with that I really, well, actually there are two, but Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. It was written in like 1970 something, but he was a doctor that goes into, in a roundabout way, he's talking about patterns too, but it's just like thought patterns and where they go. And then one more book that changed my life, like quite literally about, it changed my life in how it reflected me back to me. It's called A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. So this was also written in the 70s. And I really enjoy this book because she delivers scripture. It's not a religious book, but she delivers scripture in more of a reflective and refined metaphor. For example, you know, what do I say? The word sin is a mathematical term for missing the mark.
Oh.
Not one of us has ever not missed the mark, which means we have sinned. Heaven and hell. Heaven is when you are in homeostasis with the self. Hell is when you are out of sync with yourself. So when you are battling those demons or the turmoil or addiction or whatever it is, I would argue that it's not the substance, it's your thought patterns and the loops that you are stuck in. You even said it yourself. You turned to substances because you wanted to escape. More than likely, I don't want to assume for you, but more than likely because you didn't have anywhere else to go. And that was the only valve that alleviated that. And so we get into that. And what we don't learn about alcohol also is that it has a negative feedback loop where the brain's reward system receives it in a certain way. And so by the time, you wake up and you feel like trash, by the time it wears off, we forgot. And then the only thing to make us feel better is to go back to that thing. And so we just keep feeding that thing. And it is a son of a bitch to get out of. Don't get me wrong. Like, because I didn't start as early as you, but from 15 until about 5 years ago, it was every night to saturation. And the only reason I wouldn't drink or something for a couple days is because that's how bad the hangover was. I had to recover for 3 days. And
Mm.
that was just physically. That wasn't even up here.
I thank God that I started getting like if I would in college, I would drink like 2 bottles of wine to myself. And then
Yep.
I started realizing day one was physical hangover. Day two and three were extreme emotional hangovers. I finally realized, oh, this is where my anxiety is coming from.
You know what's really interesting about that too is that is a that is an imposed what they call recalibration of the neurological wiring of your brain. Like we basically used alcohol to beat our bodies up because we obviously move at very high capacity, getting things done, going, getting it done. That's also a trauma response. But we use this substance that we didn't even know to ground us. And by ground us, I mean like quite literally being so hungover, you just, there have been a few times where I'm like, never again. But yeah, the first day is physical and then it's that mental thing. But that mental clarity is the clarity that I don't know if you experienced this, but I would have like euphoric hangovers where I would realize certain things during my hangover, and that's actually a thing. But that is accessible without the alcohol.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything we're talking about right now, the research and stuff that I've been doing, because I dabbled in plant medicine for a long time too, like, mushrooms. I've never done acid or anything like that, but mushrooms, bufo, DMT. I mean, I'm in a breathing community. I'm in all of that. And what people are trying to achieve through plant medicine is achievable without it. All you have to do is pay attention to yourself. Choose to love yourself. Choose to put distractions down. That's all plant medicine is. That's all this medicine does. It takes the mask off, it takes all the distractions off for a concentrated amount of time. That's why we have these crazy breakthroughs and whatever. Everything I've experienced in the last 2 months is exactly equivalent to a plant medicine breakthrough, only I get the gift of experiencing it all the time now because that's the world I live in now.
Yeah.
Like to the point where I don't even think I need plant medicine anymore. And
Yeah.
that's a huge statement for anybody who knows me because they know how much I love mushrooms. It's my favorite channel to be on. But the medicine talks to me and because I'm so in tune with my body. And I think that you are too. I think that for you to be as old as you were, guiding girls into a different mindset within the environment that they were in. Like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that's a very, very good skill to have. You're able to perceive things however you want. Not
Mhm.
everybody knows how to do that.
Yeah,
So,
that's cool.
hell yeah, it's cool. I said this once before. I think of myself a lot when we talk because you are like what you were doing in 8th grade, I was doing in my 20s.
Mm.
Right? So you're that much further ahead. And I said this like our second podcast episode. I'm like, you don't even have any idea. You were saying it. Had you started 2 years before, been, had things just played out different and I could have changed my perspective. But I was so deep in that hurt. I was so deep in the why. And I wanted a sorry and I wanted justice and I wanted somebody to fucking answer. I wanted somebody to say sorry. I wanted somebody to stand up and say, you know what? That wasn't okay. And you want to know who it finally was?
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what to say because it sounds so simple, but I want everybody to know that I know that it's not.
Yeah.
But once you're finally able to do that, it's so beautiful here. And it's overwhelming, but it's overwhelming because you didn't even realize that it could be this way until you get to it.
Yeah. And it just
And
takes
for
it just takes like trial and error. Like not everyone's journey is going to be the same. Not everyone's going to have that same way out, but it just truly is try new things to connect with yourself. I'm not saying try new drugs. I'm just saying
I'm not either. Does it help in a safe environment? Yes, mushrooms are my first awakening. My mushrooms are the first time that I knew what it felt like to radiate.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, that's very similar. I don't know if I want our podcast to be about this, but we're gonna talk about it anyways. The first So I have taken hallucinogenics a few times, and the first time I did, I hated every second of it. But the next day, like you said, the whole world I realized so much. And it literally the world looked brighter.
Yes.
I don't know the science behind it, but the world literally looked brighter. Colors brighter, everything beautiful. So I'm sure the drugs were still wearing off, but the realizations I was having as I came back to reality, honestly, that was probably a huge turning point for me. It genuinely was. But the more important part is that I kept hold of that.
Yes.
I kept hold of the things I realized. I kept hold of this. It's like this deep, like core feeling. Like I literally like through the center of my body that I felt like finally realizing like the world's a good place. Like it's okay. I'm okay. I'm a good person. And I just can't even explain like the feeling that happened through this region of me. And so,
You should describe that to ChatGPT and it'll explain to you what was going on then. But it is connected to what's called the afterglow effect.
mm,
And so it happens with mushrooms and a lot of other plant medicines. But what happens is once the medicine wears off, um, your neuroplasticity has been affected. And so you are able to see things differently because there's nothing standing in the way of that clarity now. And so what was happening to you in that, something within you integrated after that because anything having to do, it probably had to do with how you speak about yourself. If it went through the whole midsection of your body, the whole midsection of your body is confidence, self-awareness, um, how you move through and execute certain things. So after that day, you probably also walked a little bit taller. You probably felt safer. You probably, had a little tiny bit less weight on you than you did before from all of the shit that you had been trying to climb out of.
yeah. Yeah. And I'm trying to think for people who don't want to try that,
They don't
read
need to.
read books by people maybe who have.
You could read books by people who have. I mean, honestly, the way that you get to it is just being curious about yourself and use the technology that is around you. Again, I'm not saying just like use ChatGPT for everything, but we walk around with these devices in our hands that cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. It's got to do more for me than just texting.
Yeah.
So that's what I started doing with it. And what I've done for myself, you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to therapists and struggling just to get through life and ruminating and thinking that you're alone all the time and whatever. So it's just an option for people who do feel alone to use it to ask questions because if you're alone, you're not doing anything else anyway.
And I think too, something that really helped me, it's hard. It's hard to pinpoint things, you know. You live so much life and you go through so many things and you come through. And I can't pinpoint when my life changed. I can't pinpoint when I had realizations X, Y, and Z. Like I can't pinpoint that. But I think one thing that I really that really helped me was I also, even if you are super sure in your faith, that is amazing. Whatever your faith is,
Mm.
whatever your spirituality is, I am not saying to let go of that, but I'm saying start reading about other spiritualities because I've learned about lots of different things, lots of different faiths, lots of different religions, lots of different ways to be spiritual. And you really come to learn a lot of core life things, beliefs, values, patterns. If you just study more about the way people see the world working and the higher powers and whatever, just I think I'm trying to make it more complicated than it is. All I'm saying is I think one thing that I really attribute a lot of my growth in is learning about different spiritualities. I really don't need to make it more complicated than that.
Well, that's because they're all saying the same thing in
I
a different
know.
way.
I know
And
that.
yeah, and it's turned into an opinion, I
Yeah.
think. And you're so not wrong, but also what kind of faith do you have and how believable is your faith if you can't have it be challenged?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like anything else. If you're really into something, you should probably study the opposite of it. If it's, I found myself saying that, somebody I never would have thought I would say this about, but I referred to them as having a brilliant mind because even though they're a dumpster fire, I'm like, look at what it is that they know how to do. Look at how they do the thing. They're really good at what it is that they do. So that's also removing yourself from the thing to be able to look at what's in front of you rather than I really want people to stop responding through such emotionally charged standpoints. And I say that because I am still like that. I still have to like take a step back once in a while where I'm like, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. This is I'm charged or whatever. But when I do step away from it and I take the emotion out of it and I look at it for what is it actually saying?
Yeah.
And that's what we mean by they're all saying the same thing. It's everybody, it's 10 minus 1 is 9. Okay, we got Catholics. So is 5 plus 4. It's just a different way of getting there.
Yeah.
And
And
it's okay.
I believe too that there is a lot of power and peace behind choosing the faith you want to believe in.
Yes.
I think that is beautiful. So I hope no one took that the wrong way. I just think that a lot of my personal development came from reading about specifically, the one book that really changed my life. Well, now I'll put four different books in the five different books in the notes. Why Buddhism is True is one of the most incredible books I've ever read. I do not identify as Buddhist, but it is so cool. It links psychology and biology to Buddhism, and it's just incredible. I've read it 1.5 times. I gave it to my mom for Christmas one year, and it's super cool. So I feel like everyone should read that too. It explains a lot about the idea of what the self is or is not. So I'll leave it at that, but really cool book.
We've referenced a lot of books on here today. I love it. I love it.
We could put it in the show notes.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Say that.
Well, with that being said,
Time to wrap things up.
I think so. I think so. So, for everybody listening, you can find us on YouTube, Instagram. That's it for now, I think. But subscribe, follow, like, and share. Holy crap, I got it all in one go. Um, and since everybody's getting to know us too, this just popped into my brain. We would love suggestions from you guys about what it is you want us to talk about. I know birth control is probably coming up here soon. Probably another chat GPT thing's going to happen. Also, I would really, I'm totally, totally, totally open to people reaching out to me on Instagram or otherwise to dive a little bit deeper into what that looks like and what my process is with that. Because it gets pretty deep. And I really enjoy explaining it to people and then kind of I hand it off to you and you get kicked out of the nest pretty quick. So yeah, remember to lead with courage, speak with purpose, and stay curious. And check us out next week.
Bye.
Bye.